Being diagnosed with Crohn's or colitis can really flip your life on its head. It's obviously not fair, and no doctor can really explain why it's happening to you, but I can promise that it's not a random condition like they say it is. Today, we're giving you the tools to help identify one of the biggest drivers that we see in our Crohn's colitis clients who are successfully reversing their disease, and that is parasites. We see it in over 80% of people, and you're going to be shocked to learn some of the things that come out. So on today's episode, we're going to be talking about what parasites are, how you get them, and why they're such a problem, as well as what they're actually eating inside of you as a food source, and of course, how to get rid of them. I'm so excited to share this with you so you can finally start getting some answers. Contrary to what your doctors told you, Crohn's and colitis are reversible. Now, I've helped hundreds of people reverse their bowel disease, and I'm here to help you do it too, because inflammation always has a root cause. We just have to find it. This is the Reversing Crohn's and Colitis Naturally podcast. Now, I do these live trainings in my Facebook group every single week and put the audios here for you to listen to. If you want to watch the video versions of these episodes, just click the link in the show notes to get access to our Facebook group and YouTube channel. And for weekly updates, information, tips, and tricks, you can sign up for our email list by clicking the link in the show notes below. Something we're introducing here, most doctors don't know this or really believe this, but did you know that parasites can be causing your IBD? Now, they're not just a third world problem, contrary to popular belief. So in this training, we're going to talk about parasites. We'll talk about what they are, how we get them, and why they're such a massive problem. I'll tell you about some client stories of parasites. I'm talking 3-4 foot anacondas, including some of my own that I've dealt with, and of course, how to get rid of them. But be warned, this is not just a simple DIY project. If you are new here, my name's Josh Deck. I'm a holistic nutritionist, IBD specialist, medical lecturer, and physician's consultant for Crohn's and colitis, and even severe IBS. And my team and I have helped hundreds and hundreds of people now reverse their IBD. So much so, the colonoscopy reports come back as healthy, normal, and unremarkable. And unremarkable in any case is usually bad except for your colonoscopy. So it's a very, very good thing. Very, very cool stuff. And I'm here to help you prove your doctors wrong and make sense of what's going on inside of your guts. Let's dive right in. We're talking about parasites. So number one, what are parasites? Why are they a problem? How do we get rid of them? What is a parasite? The definition of a parasite is an organism that lives in or on a host, stealing nutrients at the host's expense. They require the host to survive, and they consume parts of you as nutrients. And a parasites, they can eat a lot of different stuff. So here's what I want you to keep in mind. Doctors often say they're a third world problem. There are approximately 1 million different types of parasites that we know of in the world, and approximately 1,400 species that actually can infect humans. 1,400 species can infect humans. And so they're very, very easy to get. They're kind of all over the place. You can get them from public bathrooms. There was a common one. I just spoke to a young lady the other day, and she took her daughter over to daycare. There was a baby there who was very sick, had some diarrhea. Her daughter came home a day later, had diarrhea. Another day later, or 2 days later, her other daughter got diarrhea from one baby at the daycare. This thing spread, and today her daughter's 6 years old and has Crohn's disease. And so this can be a very easy way to transmit Giardia, for example, which is a nasty parasite. You can get them from food. They can come in water sources. Water can be contaminated. They can come from raw things like raw fish, especially your sushis, undercooked meats. Pork is a big one. Even some fruits and vegetables from these big industrial farms can transmit parasites. And we often say, well, they're a third world country problem. Well, look how much immigration there is, travel destination that there is. Look how much food we import and export all over the world. Maybe there was a time when we could say they're third world, but no longer. We already know as well that parasites live as part of our microbiome. They're part of us. They're part of this ecosystem. And so if you're someone and you're dealing with IBD, you're probably like everybody else. You woke up one day sick. After a couple of days, weeks, or months, that's probably 80% of people dealing with this disease. And there's no explanation. Your doctor says it's just genetic. One day it just randomly turned on. But somewhere you knew this never made sense. Like the math doesn't add up. How can I be perfectly healthy one day, then sick the next? How come my child was healthy but is now sick? It is not in my genetics. Even if it's genetic, it doesn't really matter. So what's really going on? And a big driver can be these parasites. And there's 1,400 different species that can infect humans. And so we're not going to talk about naming the species today. There's just way too much. We're not going to get a textbook worth. But I want you to understand this is not a third world problem. There's lots of opportunities for parasites to get to your system. And what your doctors are telling you, even if they test, we'll talk about that, doesn't matter. You can still have them and not show up on a test. So the first thing we need to know, first and foremost, parasites are not a third world problem. I want you to remember that. Even when your doctor says they are, know that they are not. That's the knowledge they have and they're wrong, okay? Second thing is when your doctor tests for parasites, even the world's best parasite tests are 40% accurate at the best of times, because parasites can hide. Parasites can burrow through the gut lining. They can hide in the crypts and folds of your bowels. They can get into muscles and joints. They can get into all kinds of areas. They like to hide inside the lymphatic tissue, in your liver, your gallbladder and bile ducts, the ileocecal valve, like right where that small and large will connect, the appendix. They can be all over the place. If you have hip pain, back pain, we'll talk about that. It can be parasites in the muscle. And so to try to pick them out of a stool test, they're very difficult. Not only that, but parasites even produce a lot of enzymes where they break themselves down. And so it can be very difficult to actually test for a parasite. So if you got a test and it said negative, doesn't matter. If you have the symptoms, which we'll go over, we're going to talk about this, you could still have a parasite infection, and probably 80% of the clients we see have parasites as the main driver or a contributing factor to their bowel disease. And the kicker is, if you do have parasites, and you have other conditions like mold or like fungal overgrowth or something else, E. coli, you may not get them out successfully if you have parasites that are active. So we're going to go through this and talk about how to get rid of them and some of the steps, but I'm going to preface right away, it's not DIY. It can be very dangerous. People can make themselves very sick or do a parasite protocol and render it completely ineffective, wasting time and money. We'll get into that. Okay, so the first thing, parasites are not a third world problem. Second, your doctor may test, but they're 40% accurate at the best of times. Most people will test negative. Okay, the next one we want to talk about is that 80 to 90% of the people we see inside of our program with the hundreds of cases of Crohn's colitis we've now reversed, they have parasites either as a major driver or one of the layers of contributing problems. And we're going to talk about more of this here in a minute. So here's what parasites can do. Remember we talked about the definition of a parasite is an organism that lives on or inside of a host. Technically a leech would be a parasite, right? It leeches on and it sucks blood. That's a parasite. But it can also live inside you, and they have all kinds of things that they eat for food. So think about this for just a minute. Parasites can eat blood, and they can also eat iron. Well, give me a thumbs up in the chat, raise your hand, or just give me a nod. Give me a yes if you've ever been diagnosed with blood issues or anemia, low iron. If you've ever required an iron transfusion or a blood transfusion with your IBD. Maybe you're not bleeding 2 cups of blood a day, but you're still having a lot of low iron or low hemoglobin and requiring blood transfusions, because it could be a parasite. So parasites eat blood, they can eat iron. There's different kinds that eat different things. So low hemoglobin, low iron levels. You get iron infusions over and over again and you're still anemic every 8 weeks or 6 months, whatever. You're like, oh, I'm anemic again, weird. It could be a parasite eating it for food. Other bacteria and microbes can eat your iron for food. So it can be really rough, but there's a reason why it's happening. Your body isn't just iron deficient for no reason, okay? There's more to it. The other things they can eat, they love to eat different nutrients. Now, nutrients can be just about anything. So it can be vitamins, it can be minerals and amino acids and all of that. But if you've ever been diagnosed with a nutrient deficiency, maybe a B vitamin issue or malabsorption syndrome, I don't like syndromes because they're just saying, oh, you just have this thing going on. Saying you have a syndrome leaves no explanation. It just sort of works under the assumption that your body is somehow deficient or defective. Doesn't make any sense. But if you have something that is eating the food, therefore you're not getting it. Picture this. You consume something. You're eating a nice juicy steak and it breaks down inside of your body and it gets in. Now it's in the intestines ready to absorb. But before, okay, you've broken this. Let me draw this up. You got a little steak here. That's a nice juicy steak. And you've eaten it. It gets into the intestines. This is where it starts breaking down, okay? Now it turns into these itty bitty pieces. And before these pieces can actually enter and pass through the intestinal wall, guess what? This little wormy, this little parasite comes up, chomp, 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 and starts eating all your nutrients. They never make it into the body. Of course you have malabsorption syndrome. It's not an issue between here and here, between the nutrients in your tissues. It's something else that's actually consuming them before they get to your tissues. Malabsorption syndrome doesn't make any sense, right? Now, you can be inflamed, of course. There can be other issues leading to lack of absorption, but this is something to keep in mind. Nothing I'm telling you is definitive. Symptoms are all going to be contextual, but keep this in mind. So they can eat blood and iron, so you can have your hemoglobin issues, your anemia. They can consume nutrients for food, so you can have these malabsorption issues or be low on vitamins and minerals and other things. Very, very common in IBD. The other one they can do, there's lots of them, I'm just going to name a few, but they can actually eat and consume lymphatic fluid, believe it or not. Hungry little buggers. They'll get in there and consume lymphatic fluid. So if you're somebody, we need fluid to drain. Picture it like a pipe. You can't move things through a pipe without water moving through it. Now, if that pipe gets dry, what happens? Things cake up. Drains can get clogged. There's nothing constantly flushing it through. It's like having a garburator in your sink, but you never flush water through it. It's just full of food and now it rots. Picture that in your lymphatic system. It's a constant machine of fluid pumping through, but now you're getting low on fluid. Something's eating it or blocking that. Well, if you've ever had swollen lymph glands, now it can be armpits, neck, throat, groin, even in the feet. If you're somebody who gets swelling in the hands or swelling in the feet, maybe there's a history of mastitis or inflammation in the breast tissue. There's a lot of lymphatics through there. And so if you've got a parasite issue, it can cause this lymphedema, we call it. You can get swelling in the lymph glands, swelling in lymphatic areas, swelling or puffiness. If you lift your arms up and your armpits aren't a pit where it inverts, it's actually kind of bulgy or seems like watery and swollen, that's a lymphatic issue, right? If you see swelling in the skin, that can all be lymphatic swelling or poor drainage due to parasites. Now, parasites will also eat certain tissues or nutrients. Think liver, think lungs. They can actually consume some of these bits and pieces. And so if you're going in and you're somebody who's got, they'll even eat muscles. We talked about how they get into the muscle tissue, right? They'll slice the gut lining. So liver, lungs, muscle, they can eat some of these. They'll eat basically anything, but these are common ones. And so if you're somebody who comes in and you've got muscle aches and pains, pain in your hips, a lot of muscle, lower back or middle back aches and pains, acupuncture won't take it away, massage, physio, it's not going away. Maybe it's because it's not from a muscular issue. Maybe it's something irritating the muscle. If you've got inflammation, if you've got arthritis, these things could be a problem. Now, remember, they're going to eat what they're nearby. They're going to eat. So they can live in the intestines. They'll live in your drainage and detox pathways. If you remember a couple of weeks back, or a couple episodes back if you're on the podcast, we did an episode on drainage and detoxing, right? Detoxing is gathering the garbage. Drainage is taking it out to the curb. And so if you have drainage pathways in your body, your liver, your lymphs, your lungs, your sinuses, bile ducts, these are different ways that things get around and exit the body. Colon, kidneys, bladder, these are how things exit. And so parasites can hang out in these areas blocking a lot of this drainage. They'll live in your lymphatics, they'll live in your liver and bile ducts. Ileocecal valve they love. So if you're having pain or discomfort kind of around the belly button or the right side of the belly button, the appendix, the gallbladder, if you had your appendix or gallbladder removed, there might be a parasite issue in there as well. If you have pain in the upper right of your shoulder blades, that could be a gallbladder issue, could be parasites. And there's a lot of ways to detect this. We'll talk about symptoms earlier, but keep in mind, parasites are a very complex issue. Now, a lot of people go, well, I took some ivermectin or I took a parasite protocol before. It didn't do anything for me. Probably not, because there's a lot of prep. It's not as simple as just taking a protocol. If your drainage and detox pathways are locked and blocked, and you try to take the garbage out to the curb, you just drop it in another area of the house because you can't get it outside. If you're trying to clear parasites, you're evicting tenants from the building, but the doors are locked. And so, if you're trying to get rid of parasites, there's a lot of prep that needs to happen first. You need to have proper drainage. And we'll talk about that towards the end here. We talked about food sources. We know parasites, number one, they're not a third world problem. We know that your doctor may test, you can get testing, but it's super inaccurate. They're very hard to detect. 80 to 90% of the people we see, over the hundreds we've had now reversing their disease in their guts, parasites are a major layer or the primary driver as part of their condition, right? Picture this. Let's go back to the confusion you have about waking up one day suddenly ill. We say it's an autoimmune condition. Your body's just attacking itself. How does your body randomly one day go and just start attacking itself? You have over 200 different checks and balances of the trillions of different cells and microbes in your microbiome. Hundreds of different checks and balances to make sure things are being done properly. How can your body just attack itself? There are cells literally designed to kill the cells that attack you. So what if it's just your body attacking something in your microbiome and your gut is merely caught in the crossfire? If you got a gunfight between two opposing armies, there's a reason the cities get blown up and everything gets torn apart. It's not because they're intentionally blowing up buildings, they're attacking everything and the buildings get caught in the crossfire. This happens in your digestive system. So parasites are a big problem in there. It's one of the things your body can be attacking next to other viruses, fungus, etc. Okay? So keep this in mind. They're not third world, they're hard to detect. Most people have them, and they can feed on blood and iron, causing things like anemia. They can feed on nutrients, leading to malabsorption syndromes or deficiencies. They can steal lymphatic fluid, leading to lymphedema, swelling, and skin issues. They can live or hang out and eat parts and tissues in the liver, lungs, in the muscles, for example, aches, pains. These are all basic symptoms. And so they block your drainage. So let's talk about some of these symptoms a bit more in detail. And keep the questions coming in the chat, guys, because I will go through these toward the end. I want to make sure we can answer your questions. Parasites are nasty business. Let's talk about some symptoms of parasites. First of all, we can palpate, or that means press in on the areas where they live. So we know they live in the liver, for example. And so you can actually, I'm a little short in the camera here, but you can press in around your belly button. So for example, you want to relax your belly, take your fingers and actually drive them up under the rib cage. You can really palpate, pressing your liver in there. You feel like, oh yeah, it feels terrible, like the wind's getting knocked out of me, it feels really uncomfortable, I got some pain. There could be some parasites in there. Now, you can also go a little further over to the gallbladder. If you have pain in the gallbladder, pain in the shoulder blades, if you have known history of gallstones, if you have some sludgy bile or fatty foods are causing problems, it could be a parasite issue causing issue in those areas. The belly button. If you're someone with pain around your belly button or in your belly button, it could be a parasite. Off to the right and just down below that belly button. Mine's here, so I can go down to the right of that. That can be around the appendix. If you have issues in there, it could be a parasite. Back, hips, joints, these things can be indicative of parasites. If you're someone who has, let's talk about allergies, seasonal allergies. You never used to have them, but they're really bad, or they're seasonally getting really bad. You didn't have allergies before, but now suddenly you do. Remember, we talk about this analogy all the time of your cup being full. Let's use this for your immune system. Parasites are filling it up. Now, normally, your cup is about this full. Very little, okay? Seasons come around, maybe something stuffs you up. Pollen might cause a little bit of a rich or a runny nose. That's about it, okay? But now you got parasites, your cup is full. Now what happens, pollen comes in and now it overflows. Like, oh yeah, it's just seasonal stuff. It's pollen, it's dander, it's whatever. No, something filled your cup. Could be parasites overdrawing these paths of your immune system, and that can lead to more seasonal allergies. You can also find yourself with chronic sinus issues, repeat sinus infections, getting prone to colds and flus, runny sinuses, rashes, hives. These typical allergy-like symptoms can be a sign of parasites. If you're somebody who has itching, another sign of parasites. It could be vaginal itching, it could be rectal itching, could be a sign of parasites. Other conditions we typically see, remember, parasites can hang around those bowels in the small intestine. They can mess with your valves. If you've got a condition called SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, well, guess what? If the door to your intestines is flapping open because something can't close because there's something jamming it, guess what's going to start to backflow? Extra microbes getting into areas they shouldn't, leading to small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. If you have a low libido, these can also mess with hormones, sex hormones. These can be problems associated with parasites. If these sound like any of you, drop it in the chat, let me know. If you're going, wait a minute, that sounds like me, let me know some of the symptoms you're experiencing below. If I name a symptom and that sounds like you, just type that symptom below so we can keep track of you guys and see what's going on. I want to talk about these as this goes on, okay? Now let's talk about sleep. If you're somebody who has poor sleep, I can't get to sleep, I'm waking up during the night, even if it's just for a bowel movement or just to use the bathroom, just gotta pee, you're waking up, that could be a parasite issue. If you are a teeth grinder, neurologically you're very tense, especially at nighttime, could be a parasite. Just saying. And if you don't know if you grind your teeth, one, you'll typically know, your dentist would tell you. If you don't go to a dentist very often, molars should be more like this. They kind of have like a hill on the outsides. If yours are sort of flat, you grind your teeth. Guess what mine look like? Parasites. I've had them for a long time. In fact, I'm on a parasite protocol as we speak. And guess who just got out a 12-inch worm like the day before yesterday? I posted it on social. You can watch that video. They're gnarly. I've seen much worse, 3 and 4 foot worms out of clients. We've had people passing 30, 40, 50. And the question is, how did my doctor never see these? How come they don't learn about them? It's pretty bizarre stuff, okay? So poor sleep can be a problem. My glasses just keep falling down. Bear with me, guys. So poor sleep, if you're a teeth grinder, if you're waking up at night, it could be a parasite problem. If you are somebody who has trouble gaining weight, for example, malabsorption, maybe there's something eating the food before you absorb it. Could be a parasite problem. If you have infertility issues, parasites can actually, have you ever heard of a hydrocele? They can actually hang out in like the testes of men, blocking that off as well, which can cause some swelling. They love reproductive organs. If you're somebody with a lot of cysts, ovarian cysts, if you're somebody who deals with cysts or tumors within the body, there was a study that was done, I forget how many 100+ tumors and cysts they actually dissected. 100% had parasites. And the idea is that cancers, tumors, and cysts, it's actually your body encapsulating something to put it in like a bubble to keep it from getting out to protect you. Nothing in the body is a mistake. Your body, once we start to understand everything your body does is because it's trying to heal you. It's taking every mechanism, even deadly ones sometimes, to try to protect you as a last-ditch effort. Tumors and cysts can be one of those things. And so if you're prone to a lot of those, it might be a parasite problem. If you're somebody with hormonal issues, thyroid issues, same thing. Let's talk about the skin. Skin issues. If you're somebody who has dry skin, flaky skin, if you got scaly skin, psoriasis, eczema, these can be textbook tell signs of parasites because they can also affect the skin. They can cause a lot of issues in the immune pathways dealing with the skin as well. Because remember, your outsides, your external body is a direct reflection of the internal. As part of our intake process, I had people take pictures of their mouth, their tongue, their fingernails, shorts and a t-shirt, front, side, back. I can see your legs. I can see where weight's being stored. All these outside symptoms tell us what's going on inside. But these are things your doctor looks at, where they look at your gut. But your gut's not working by itself. It's connected to everything else in the body. So eczema, psoriasis, dryness, scaliness in the skin can also be signs of parasites. Let's talk about mental health. If you have anxiety, depression, irritability, moody issues, focus issues, concentration issues, ADHD-like symptoms, guess what? Could be parasites. Hair loss or early hair thinning. And we also, other one I'm going to put on here, let's talk about your liver and your blood. Remember, they can live in the liver. They love to eat blood. Let's look at your blood work, for example. If you have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, if you've got a history of elevated liver enzymes, ALT, these different enzymes could be a parasite problem, as well as high cholesterol. What if it's parasites? There's a lot of different things that can cause these problems, but parasites are one of the commonalities. Now again, I've told you before, I don't know if I'm undecided if I'm going to put some of these photos on the internet or not, because they're pretty disgusting for those. Maybe I'll put it behind like a warning page, like see at your own risk. But I did just put a video on social recently about it. One of my 12-inch parasites that just came out as well. Now I've got other people, it depends. Some parasites will affect people worse. Sometimes you got more of them, right? So this is why someone might have bowel disease versus another might just have irritable bowel syndrome. But think about this for a minute. We've got clients, Billie Jean, great example. She's been up and down inside the groups talking about this. 15 years with severe ulcerative colitis, all the drugs, the Remicades, everything. She had cancer lesions all over her body, melanomas popping up. She kept having them removed. 20, 30 of them a year would be getting removed. Well, guess what? She had a body full of mold, started pulling that out. Her IBD was almost gone. Guess what? She got out some parasites. She sent me a picture with this parasite on the ground that she pulled out, and it's next to a measuring tape. I think it's like 38 inches. That's an Amazon anaconda. You know what I mean? So we have these in the body. And if your body, think about what happens. You get a tiny little infection in your hand, you cut and scrape it, it can swell, it can pus, all kinds. You might need antibiotics topically to get rid of that. That's microscopic. Imagine something that you can see with the eye that's half the thickness of the marker in my hand and 36 inches long. Imagine how hard your body is fighting to kill that thing off and get rid of it, what it's doing, what it's eating in your body, how long they've been there, how many there can be. Of course we're going to have bowel issues. Of course we're going to be ill. Your body is fighting an alien-sized freaking warfare in there, and your doctor goes, well, let's just suppress the immune system. You're telling me you want to shut off and suppress the thing that's actually trying to kill the giant worms inside of me? Let's talk about this rationally. Let's make sense of the things that don't make sense, because this doesn't add up. The math isn't mathing, guys. Your body isn't randomly attacking itself. Parasites are a primary driver in a lot of what we see. Now, your body, if it is attacking itself, has cells that kill those cells off. So what if it's just your body attacking something else? In your gut, your tissues are caught in the crossfire. This is what we have to keep in mind. My argument, okay? Now, the reason I say it's my argument, it's incredibly successful. Hundreds of people reversing their bowel disease, doctors jaw on the floor. We just had Larissa on recently, just last week, talking about her story. I think she was diagnosed in 2013, having issues prior to that, so arguably 10 to 13 years, 11 to 13 years of bowel disease. Her gut was so bad, colon was super inflamed, on the verge of getting it removed. She literally describes it very creatively as having squirrels with razor blades attached to their feet running around on her insides. Profuse bleeding, nausea, chronic fatigue, the pain, the urgency. Our first call together, we jumped on the first call. 5 minutes in, she had to go run, and she's sitting on the toilet. We're having this conversation. It's not unusual for what we do, but keep in mind, it can be that severe. She just came out, guys, 16 weeks. She got her colonoscopy report back from her doctor. She was working with Curtis, one of our specialists in the program, and she came back, got her colonoscopy report from the doctor. Unremarkable. It was healthy, pink, normal. There was one itty bitty speck. Her doctor was making fun of her and said, well, you're doing that diet thing. She's like, that's a lot more than diet, but whatever. He was kind of teasing her about it. Got the report back, jaw on the floor. He brought the nurses in. They were talking about it. She's like, I'm going to show you this. Showed them the parasites that came out of her. They've never seen these before. So there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. And it's not this lifelong condition that just happens randomly. It's not your fault. If your kid is sick, it's not your fault. It's not negligence, and rarely is diet, it's part of the problem or part of the process, but diet's not like the total solution here, okay? It goes much deeper than that. People see, oh, he's a nutritionist, he'll give me a meal plan. We go much, much deeper. There's a lot more than meets the eye. But here's what we're gonna do for you. I wanna talk about getting rid of parasites. Okay, let's talk about getting rid of these bad boys, because they are a big problem. Now, most people will think, well, I'll just take ivermectin. I'll just take mebendazole, fenbendazole, some kind of azole, some sort of pharmaceutical drug. We have to do preparation. There's no silver bullet. Now, most people, if you go to Mexico, for example, on a vacation, you come back, you think you got parasites, you might be looking at 2 months. Most people we see inside the program going after parasites, from start to finish, you're probably 4 to 6 months. There's different timelines that it can take. Typically, kids respond better, depends on the residual damage. But look at this. The first thing we have to do, and this is my process. If you guys are taking supplements to just manage inflammation, I talk about this a lot, you're on plant-based medication. You're not actually fixing the problem. You're taking curcumin, you're taking qingdai or dragon's blood or aloe or slippery elm. These are great products in context. But keep in mind, you're taking them and they're simply masking the problem. They're managing inflammation. It's like you're putting water on the fire while there's still gas fueling it. It's not fixing the problem, but it can manage it. But keep in mind, in this context, it's just plant-based medication. So the first thing we have to do, number one, we have to ID the problem. If we cannot identify and name the problem, we're using plant-based medication, we're masking symptoms. We have to know what it is. If we can look at you and go, yep, you have parasites. Perfect. We know what we're dealing with. The next step we have to do is drainage. Now, I'm not going into drainage in detail. We just did an episode on that, I think 2 weeks ago or something. You can check back. We have the podcast and the YouTube channel for this as well. We have to go through drainage. We have to get the doors open. Getting rid of parasites, you're evicting tenants from the building, but the doors are locked. If they can't get out, what are they gonna do? They're gonna pick a different room in the house, squat, and they're gonna be mad. They're gonna pee on the rug and start a fire and burn your house down. This is why people will do protocols and get sicker. They don't have proper drainage, or they don't really know what they're going after. They're shotgunning and guessing, and those things they're trying to get out are getting more resistant. There's a lot of steps here. So the first, we have to know what's going on. We go through what's called symptomatology. Your body speaks a language. Your gut only has 14, 15, 16 different words. Whether you have a stomach flu, IBS, SIBO, diverticulitis, Crohn's, colitis, doesn't matter. Your gut will say things like constipation, diarrhea, bloat, gas, pain, cramping, nausea, vomiting, increase, decrease, appetite. Maybe it says blood and mucus. Maybe it says acid reflux. There's not many words it can say. This is why we talk about all the other symptoms, the pain, the palpation, the skin, the joints, the moods, the sleep, the teeth grinding. These can all be other symptoms. It expands your body's vocabulary. We can learn to communicate with it to identify the problem. Once we can do that, we know what's causing inflammation. We have to open the doors so they can get out. So this is going to be drainage. Again, I'm not detailing drainage. We just went over that recently. You can make sure you can check back on the channel here for more info on that one. Once we have the drainage, this is where we're going to go to the simple 5 R's. Now it sounds simple, but again, there's a lot of nuances. But the 5 R's, we have to go into this one. Now that we know what the problem is, we've opened the doorways. The first R is remove. Again, I've gone over this many times, so I'm not going to go into a huge bit of detail. We want to remove, say, the parasite, for example. Some people can tolerate, boom, heavy doses right away. Some people got to titrate. Some people pump on and off. It all depends on you. It requires guidance. It's very finicky. You can make yourself very, very sick doing this solo. I just want you to understand what's involved so you don't take any crazy risks, okay? We have to remove that. We mentioned your parasites, for example, can consume nutrients. The analogy I often use, your body is like a city. Say you had a parasite in your liver, for example. Your liver is its own little factory. Inside are these cells. These are the workers of the factory. If they want to get rid of things, detox and drainage and do all the things they're supposed to do, they need tools in the factory. Those are the nutrients. The parasites just ate all the tools. So this is where we have to go into your next R, which is replenish. We pick very specific nutrients your body seems to be lacking. Could be based on genetics, could be based on the DNA, it could be based on symptoms, could be based on a lot of different things, blood work, who knows? But this is another one. Oh, another one I'm going to put up for symptoms, guys, and just total backtrack, eosinophils. If you have like EOE, like eosinophilic esophagitis, if you have elevated eosinophil activation protein on GI maps, eosinophils in your blood, it's probably damn near a parasite, so keep that in mind. So we're going to remove, we're going to replenish, okay? The next one we want to do is rebuild. Now, your microbiome has been damaged. The ecosystem's been inflamed. The house is on fire. Things aren't living there properly. We have to begin rebuilding that. Sometimes it's as simple as probiotics, but rarely there's a lot that's involved. The next we want to do, of course, is repair. Repair the tissues. This is part of the nutrients we've replenished, part of rebuilding the microbiome, so they contribute to repair. This can also be purely symptomatic. Going back to those supplements we talked about, your slippery elms and aloes and qingdais and all the things that cool and soothe the gut. They can give your body some reparativeness. A lot of them are called mucogenics. Mucus, membrane layer, like a sock in a shoe, and genic means genesis or creation. So they're creating a lot of this stuff inside your body, putting that sock on, so to speak, and giving it some protection. And the last one we want to do, of course, is rejuvenate. I go into these 5 R's in more detail in previous episodes. Check the channel or the podcast thread for that. But rejuvenation, your immune system's imbalanced. We don't want to boost it, boosting an imbalance. We want to rejuvenate and bring those immune pathways back. It's like an octopus juggling. Your immune system's an octopus. It's juggling all these pieces. And what happens, you have all these, you're juggling candida and mold and parasites and stress and a stomach flu and boss at work and kids coming home sick. It's juggling all this stuff. But guess what happens? When parasites come in, for example, in this context of today's lecture, what happens, all those arms go over here now. And they're dealing with the parasites because they need all those resources. Everything else gets dropped. It overgrows. If you boost it, you might be boosting all the parasite arms, so to speak, and now you have worsened reactions, worsened issues, worsened immune system, worsened allergies, worsened sinus issues. You're getting more sick because you're pushing that imbalance. Rejuvenation means get the octopus to juggle safely again. That's what it looks like. There's a lot of steps and stages here. Most people's biggest mistakes when dealing with parasites are not prepping properly. The body has to be prepped. The foundation has to be laid. You do not build a house on sand. It will fall apart. So our job is to go in and build a solid foundation through proper drainage and detoxing and prepping the body to handle what's to come. And this is why I say it's not really a DIY project. Unfortunately, it can be very difficult. I'm turning over to the questions now. Karen says, gut parasites are possible for world travelers. Absolutely. They're possible for people who've never left the country because other people are traveling. Foods get imported, exported. You can pick them up from anywhere. Curtis is our in-house parasite expert. He's been my mentor for many years as well. He works with a lot of our clients in the program as well. And he can tell you 10 dozen ways you can get parasites. It's actually quite shocking. Carrie Boone says, my son has had many transfusions, is always anemic. 100%. Parasites interfere with a lot of these things, proper breakdown of food, nutrients that you need to actually take iron out of food. They can consume iron, consume blood. There are other microbes that can do it too, but it could very well be a parasite issue. We have to keep in mind what they're doing inside the body and how they're acting or reacting. This can tell us a story. These are back to symptoms of what's going on. Same with malabsorption, all those things. Carrie says, parasites didn't cause my son's Crohn's, but still interesting. Maybe. Maybe not. Again, I'm not saying everyone has parasites. I'm saying 80 to 90% of the people we see in our program have parasites as the main driver or part of their process. There's still a large portion of people who don't have parasites at all, or maybe aren't a problem right now. But it's getting closer and closer as the literature comes out and the data starts to come out. It's getting more and more likely that almost everybody's got them. The question is, how bad are they in you? If we don't know what's causing the disease, and we haven't, let me go back. To say parasites didn't cause it, it's very possible. No doubt about it. But unless you've completely, conclusively ruled it out, we don't know how much it is. Picture your cup filling up, right? If your cup is full and overflowing, you're having symptoms, you're having disease. Parasites could be this much of it. Parasites could be that much. We don't know. And this is where getting in and figuring out an individualized process to figure out what's happening inside of your body, that makes all the difference in the world. Douglas says, did you know that my IBD is autoimmune deficiency and that parasite didn't cause it? Stop trying to make money with fake pretenses. Well, Douglas, if you were willing to open your ears and maybe learn something in this process, maybe you could understand there's a lot more to it. Your body can't just randomly be, I don't know what autoimmune deficiency is, so if you want to clear that up, we can definitely address this. But here's the thing, just because you don't have parasites, how do you know you don't? First of all, doesn't mean the other 80 to 90% of people in the world dealing with IBD don't. And this is where I want to encourage the community to be very careful about this, because we say, well, no, I don't have it, therefore you don't have it. It's like saying this supplement worked for me, therefore it'll work for you. Well, you can give one person curcumin and glutamine, it works really well for them. For somebody else, it makes them much sicker because they're driving the wrong immune pathways. And so just because it's different for you doesn't mean it doesn't work for everybody else. And I'm trying to be very PC about this one, coming and clapping on some of these lies, because there's a lot of people clearly getting better. And so if you are not getting better, we can open that door for a conversation, but you have to be willing to learn and be teachable. If you're not willing to be teachable, you're not going to learn, you're not going to get better, and at that stage, you're becoming your own worst enemy. Mohammed asks, can parasites cause abscess? Totally. What is an abscess? An abscess is either a blockage. An abscess could be looking at cysts and these types of buildups inside the body. They're typically casing something. An abscess can be an infection that's pocketed and capsuled. Abscesses can be a lot of different things, but it's typically infection. So your body has a lot of different immune responses. It has a lot of different cells, immune cells, inflammatory cells, different types of white blood cells that cause different reactions. They do different things. Some break down with enzymes, some actually physically eat and consume. There's a lot of different things that they do. And so it's possible. I can't say for sure. And this is why it's so important to go through context. We gave you guys probably 30 different symptoms of parasites. It doesn't mean everyone's got them or that all these symptoms are guaranteed you to have a parasite. These are just more strongly associated with parasites rather than anything else. Billie Jean says, Douglas, parasites cause my IBD. It's hardly fake, my friend. Case in point, it can cause it. If it's not causing it for you, that's fine. Doesn't mean you have to tell everybody they don't exist. That's just bad news bears. You're only harming the community with that. Kimberly is a teeth grinder while she sleeps. Classic. Could be it could be just general stress as well. This is, again, guys, it's so important to understand context. I'm not saying if you grind your teeth, you do have parasites. I'm saying parasites can be a neurological irritant, which can lead to things like teeth grinding, particularly at night. If you're someone whose symptoms are, cyclical, for example, or seasonal, it could be parasites because they have life cycles. What about fibroids? Fibroids are a little bit out of my scope. That's something I would definitely loop Curtis in on. I think he might actually be here on the live. Sometimes he catches these. He might be with clients. Fibroids can be really interesting, but cysts and fibroids, especially women's health, parasites love reproductive organs, especially female reproductive organs. So we can see a lot of cysts, we can see fibroids, we can see like ovarian cysts, we can see endometriosis, a lot of inflammation. Keep in mind, your body's not making mistakes randomly. Your body's not just popping off saying, yeah, I'm gonna F you today. I'm just bored, so I'm going to fight you and cause an autoimmune condition. It doesn't work that way. So something has to be causing the inflammation. So absolutely, theoretically, I mean, again, I get a specialist in on that one to talk about it in deeper detail, but parasites can cause fibroids, to my understanding of them. Anne Marie says, is there blood work that will definitely tell you parasites? That's a great question. There's a lot of things that we can look at is actually a section of education called functional blood chemistry. And there are some studies that are alluding to the fact, again, how big they are, how big the data pools are, TBD. But I know practitioners who say they'll look at your blood and go, yes, 100% you have a parasite and here's why. There are good leading indicators, but if you are exceptionally skilled at functional blood chemistry, allegedly, you can look at it and go, yep, you have a parasite and here's what we're looking at. Jennifer asks, how can you pinpoint the type of parasites that you have, or is it just symptoms and testing to see if it's required? I stopped going to physicians due to nothing ever coming of it as far as any relief. How can you pinpoint the types of parasites? Great question. Visually, sometimes we can see. There are a lot of common ones we'll see, but there's different types of parasites in umbrellas. So we'll see protozoa, we'll see helminths. You'll even see like hookworms that are common for kids, for example, see little worms in the stool. But different types of parasites can cause different symptoms. There might be some types of parasites, for example, more prone to causing neurological issues. Some that are more prone to liver dysfunction and digestive issues, like liver flukes, for example. They hang out in the liver. They're kind of these small flat things. They're often described as like tomato skins in the toilet. You can see we got worms coming out. There are different ones that might cause back pain or hip pain based on where they like to live and where they like to hide, but it has to be symptomology. We have to go through and see the symptoms to know, but there is no type of testing, unfortunately, to pinpoint. But here's the reality. The 1,400 plus types of parasites we talked about that can get in and cause some issues in the digestive system or in your body as a general whole, a lot of them can respond to similar types of plant-based therapies and treatments if you prepared the body. Now, I know there's people listening right now going, well, just give me the pill to take. You're missing the entire picture. You have to understand you can take 40 parasite products in a row for a year straight and still get nowhere. It has to be prepped properly. And so that's my long answer short on that one. So Carrie says, parasites didn't cause his Crohn's disease, but they could be keeping him sick. Diagnosed at the age of 4, he's now 15, so he might now have parasites. Now again, kids can get parasites, totally, right? But parasites can also absolutely, that's a great point, Carrie, they can keep you sick. For example, someone could get a mold infection, which drops the immune, think about dropping the defense, the shields, so to speak. Parasites can come in, because mold is a breeding ground for parasites. They love those areas. They love that toxicity. They love the dysbiosis they create. But then sometimes you have to get rid of the parasites before you can get rid of the mold, for example. There's a lot of layers to a very complex problem. Great question, Nicole. Second question follow-up. What's the prep to lead up to the detox? So the prep has to be drainage. There's a lot of different things we use. I'm going to tell you some things, but by no means am I recommending you do these by yourself. You can cause a lot of harm. You can move and mobilize toxins and make yourself very sick. They should all be done under professional supervision. For example, if we're going through a parasite protocol, it might look like supplementation for drainage. It might look like there's a lot of different supplements we can use, but it can be liver, it can be lymphatic, it can be kidney support, gallbladder, it can be nutrients, it can be all kinds of stuff. Sometimes we'll use, say for example, enemas, like coffee enemas. Sometimes we'll use a lot of lymphatic drainage to open up, depends on your drainage pathways, like what's blocked. Has to be unique to you. There's a lot of things that we can utilize. There are lymphatic massages, there are lymphatic processes you can do at home, there is dry needling, there is acupuncture, there is exercise, there's all kinds of things you can utilize. But this is preparing your detox and drainage pathways, and symptomatically, based on how you do, good, better, or worse, or the same, this is going to tell us when we're ready to move on, and then we can start the removal process. But again, it's a very finicky process. I want you guys to have this information to understand what's involved. It's just, I know so many people come in here, and I wish I could say, yes, do this process. Without supervision, it can be very, very, very dangerous. So I haven't published these things to say, everybody take this thing. So many people do them, and they get sicker, they get worse. So it has to be nuanced to you, and it has to be managed and monitored. Mohammed asked, the parasites only eat carbs and fiber, and if so, can a carnivore diet kill the parasites? It's rare you can really starve a parasite out. That's a great question though. Fasting, starvation, or cutting out nutrients. Parasites prefer carbs and fiber, but they can eat protein. I mean, parasites can eat your own muscle. Of course, they can eat protein as well. Carnivore, A, you could give them more meat to eat inside of the gut, or B, they'll find something else. But oftentimes we see with elimination diets, we're just not contributing to the problem. Parasites do tend to prefer certain things like fibers or carbohydrates for the most part in my experience, but they can also eat and consume neurotransmitters. They can consume hormones. They could eat melatonin and serotonin, right? So there can be a lot of different issues that we can see. Why do parasites get worse at nighttime, more symptoms at nighttime? Melatonin, chomp, 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 right? They can eat that. So there's a lot of things they can eat. So diet, there's a couple things we look at. Curtis has often told me, is again one of our specialists in the program, he often says you need fish, or you need bait to catch fish, which means even if you got candida, you shouldn't go carnivore because they'll go into remission and they'll be very hard to actually kill off and take out. So they do have to have some food to eat, but keep in mind there's a lot of processes. But diet, as long as you're not feeding them junk food, processed and fried foods and fast foods that make your gut sicker or your body sicker, contributing to the glass being full, I wouldn't worry about it. If you're eating whole foods, I'm not really concerned about diet, so to speak. Is it possible to do drainage without supplements? That's a tricky one. Technically, maybe, but it would be a lot longer of a process, a lot more complicated of a process. It would be very, very difficult to do. Here's the thing. One of the ways we get parasites, if you go back to ancient literature and ancient texts, look at Ayurveda, right? 6,000-year-old Indian medicine. They have a lot of text about seeds and the benefits of seeds. Go back to the Quran. I believe their prophet Muhammad, there's a quote in there, something that says, the black seed, which is your black cumin, the black seed is a cure for everything or every ailment except for death. In the Bible, God says, I will give you all these fruits and plants and trees and seeds to multiply and eat and consume, or however it's worded. But seeds have been well known, even in ancient times, to have therapeutic properties. What do we eat today? Seedless fruit. We don't have the seeds that we used to consume. We don't have a lot of this. So these things would be, theoretically, would be preventative measures for parasites. They're in Ethiopia. They will eat raw meat. They'll kill the animal, they'll cut it off and eat it raw, but they will eat it with something that's anti-parasitic, an herb or a product of some kind. And so they're aware of these parasites. Over here, we pretend like they don't exist. And so the idea is there was a point where it could simply be just preventative, I believe, but I think things have gotten so far now where we're all so sick and deficient in all the things, our microbiomes are so messed up, we're so full of toxins and chemicals, we no longer can benefit from preventative measures. We have to go to, quote, pharmaceutical grade or therapeutic grade dosing of supplements to get the extreme levels out of our body until we can rebalance and restabilize, and then go back to just diet and non-supplementary intervention. Anne-Marie asks, when starting your program, what's the hint that says parasites? It's all symptomatology. If we're looking at your symptoms, it's like, what's the hint to interpreting this language? It's like, well, I know the language at this point. We've seen it so many times, we can see and identify it's parasites. We have to go through symptoms. We have to look at a history. When someone comes into our program, there's 2 interviews. The first intake, that's going to be about 30 minutes or so. We learn all about you, what's going on, your history, how you got here, build a story, understand the symptoms. And then I got 200 questions and paperwork for you to send back to me. I got a bunch of stuff. I want to look at blood work. We look at photos of you. We look at your medical history, any tests you've had done, any labs. We distill that down, then do a secondary interview to give us more context. So it's a several hour process to distill everything down to say, okay, here's your root cause and causes, and this is how we go about it. Let me see. Mohammed, when I have a flare-up, it really hurts at night. It could be a parasite issue because they can be more active at nighttime, or full moons. If you have symptoms coming up around the full moon, could be a parasite issue. A lot of them will have life cycles in line with that full moon. Last question, Jennifer asks, how sick can you get while going through the process if you have parasites? Parasites are already making you sick. You can get much sicker. This is the danger. I want to be careful with this one, Jennifer. If this is a question, whether you're weighing the pros and cons, if you should take it on yourself, extreme caution. People have put themselves in the hospital. People have caused new illnesses. You can drive yourself to a secondary autoimmune condition. Who knows what can happen? You might get really, really lucky, but it's not worth the risk. The 1 in a million chance you're going to do it fine and get through it fine with no intervention or no supervision and just take an Amazon pill and be fine. 1 in a billion. But it's much more likely you'll put yourself into a very bad position, heavy flares that may not go away, hospitalization, secondary autoimmune conditions. It can get really bad. This is why it's so important. I wish this stuff was a DIY, guys. This is why I put out all this content at no cost to you. We spend hours a week just giving information, putting out podcasts, YouTube stuff. It takes thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours to get this stuff out and make it free and accessible. So I want you to utilize it. But on the other hand, there are some things that just require a professional to spend hours with you going through and doing over the course of weeks and months. And that's the last one I'm going to answer here. That's all we got for you for now. Thank you so much for coming. I'm going to see you guys next time. Thanks for listening. Now, if you want help reversing your IBD, I'd like to invite you to join our Reversing Crohn's and Colitis Naturally community, where we give you the tools you need to actually reverse your IBD. Now, we've got courses, live Q&As, coaching calls, done-for-you meal plans, programs, and huge discounts on supplements from some of the top suppliers. Just click the link in the show notes to learn more.